Hi again, this is Andy, KE4GKP, and welcome back to the Ham Whisperer and Lesson 10 in the General Class Operator Element 3 exam. In this lesson, we go over the G2E section of questions. The G2E section of questions deals with digital operating, procedures, procedural signals, and common abbreviations. Which mode should be selected when using a single sideband transmitter with an audio frequency shift keying or AFSK RTTY signal? Well, there's really only two modes in single sideband, upper sideband and lower sideband. So another way to ask the question is, should you use upper or lower sideband when operating AFSK RTTY? And the answer is lower sideband, and that's pretty much just by convention. Now, RTTY is radio teletype, which in essence is alphanumeric information sent via a set of high-speed pulses. And it's sort of like a very high-speed Morse code, but instead of the dits and the das being separated by silence, there is an unbroken signal with the pulses defined by high and low tone separated by about 170 hertz. Now you can think of the dits and the das as the high note and the space between them or separating them as the low note. So this high note low note combination to communicate this way is also known as audio frequency shift keying. And technically you can use upper sideband to do this, but convention basically states use lower sideband. How many data bits are sent in a single PSK31 character? Well, the answer is the number varies, and I know what you're thinking, thanks for nothing. But PSK31 is another digital mode which sends alphanumeric characters, so like on a keyboard. And the reason the number of bits sent varies is that each character has a different set of bits which defines that letter. And the more commonly used letters like E and T have fewer bits than the less commonly used letters such as X. Also, uppercase letters have more bits than lowercase letters. So basically, the data bits in a single PSK31 character vary. What part of a data packet contains the routing and handling information? The answer is the header. And if you're not familiar with data packets, you probably should memorize this one. But if you can remember that, if you look at like a business letter or any type of letter really, the information on where that letter is supposed to go is usually ahead of the message. So if you can remember that, that'll help sort out some of the other possible answers. But the part of the data packet that contains the routing and handling information is the header. Which of the following 20-meter band segments is most often used for most data transmissions? Well, the answer is 14.070 to 14.1 megahertz. And this is one of those band plan type questions, and you're probably just going to have to memorize this. So this is more or less by convention, but the majority of data on 20-meter band is sent between 14.07 and 14.1 megahertz. Which of the following describes baudit RTTY? Well, the answer is 5-bit code with additional start and stop bits. So in RTTY, all characters consist of 5 bits. So each bit is either a high tone or a low tone. And each character is defined by the sequence of the high and low tones. For example, a high tone followed by 2 low tones, followed by a high tone and then a low tone is the character capital D. In addition to 5 bits, which defines the character, there's a bit which announces the start of each character and one that announces the end of each character. So when you see RTTY, remember 5 bits and you should be fine on the exam. What is the most common frequency shift for RTTY emissions in the amateur HF bands? The answer is 170 hertz. You're going to have to memorize this. The frequency shift, or FSK shift, for RTTY is 170 hertz. And all this means is that the two tones which define the characters are separated by 170 hertz. What does the abbreviation RTTY stand for? Well, RTTY stands for radio teletype. And there's a lot of questions in this section on RTTY. So if you want to get a little bit more clarification, I have a link to RTTY on the website. So feel free to check it out, but at least this one doesn't require a lot of memorization. What segment of the 80-meter band is most commonly used for data transmissions? Well, here's another memorization answer. It's 3,570 to 3,600 kilohertz. And once again, this is another band plan question. So 3,570 to 3,600 kilohertz is where most data communication happens for 80 meters. Where are PSK signals generally found on the 20-meter band? Well, PSK signals are generally found around 14.07 megahertz, and you can get a lot of PSK signals right around that frequency. PSK has a very small bandwidth, and it's a lot of fun, so if you get a chance, I recommend trying it out. However, unfortunately, you're going to have to memorize this question for the exam. So 14.070 megahertz, and I'll have what you need to memorize for this section of the exam on the website, so fear not. What is a major advantage of MFSK 16 compared to other digital modes? Well, MFSK 16 offers good performance in weak signal environments without error correction. So MFSK 16 stands for multiple frequency shift keying with 16 tones. Each of the 16 tones is separated by about 15.625 hertz. And if you multiply 16 by 15.625, you get a bandwidth of about 250 hertz. So if you remember that the two RTTY tones are separated by 170 hertz, there are digital modes out there with bandwidth smaller than MFSK. So a smaller bandwidth is not the correct answer. MFSK 16 does not have built-in error correction, but it really doesn't need it either. So that's another answer you can eliminate. It is relatively slow compared to other digital modes. It's not fast at all. It's basically like a chat room type speed. However, like PSK31, it offers solid performance in weak signal environments, which gives it an advantage over many of the other digital modes. So that's what you want to hone in to get this question right in the exam, that it offers solid performance in weak signal environments without error correction. What does the abbreviation MFSK stand for? Well, like we said earlier, it stands for multi or multiple frequency shift keying. It's a fun mode, and if you get a chance, I recommend you give it a shot. Well, that's the end of the G2E review and part 1 for lesson 10. If you have trouble finding part 2, go to hamwhisper.com and look under the Ham courses page and you can find it there. So take a break and relax, and I will see you in part 2.